He blindsided the Deathworld Cadet. Minutes later, surgeons were fighting to save his face. The warning light behind Cadet Nia Mercer's breaching harness blinked amber. She stopped immediately. Around her, Breach Deck 6 continued to thunder with the sounds of training, magnetic clamps locking, pressure doors slamming shut, instructors shouting corrections over the heavy mechanical whine of boarding equipment. Nia ignored all of it. She turned her head and checked the floor behind her. Empty. Only then did she reach over her shoulder and tug the harness strap tighter. You checked that already. Cadet Joriksen stood 3 meters away with his helmet tucked beneath one arm. Nia looked at him. Then she checked the floor behind herself again. Jorik laughed. You think the deck is going to attack you? No. Then what are you looking for? The place nobody should be standing. A few nearby cadets glanced over. Jorik's smile widened. He liked an audience. The Orison Joint Fleet Academy had students from 32 settled worlds and 6 allied species. Every one of them had been taught the same safety procedures for breaching equipment. But Nia had learned hers somewhere else first. Turnian. The name alone made people curious. Official fleet charts called it a survivable colony world. Anyone who had actually lived there called that description generous. Turnian's continents shifted constantly. Buildings were built on flexible foundations. Roads cracked between morning and evening. Children learned emergency collapse drills before they learned algebra. Nia had been 6 the first time. A classroom floor had dropped half a meter during a quake. She still remembered her teacher shouting over the sirens. Drop the weight. Lower yourself. Clear the fall line. Never fight gravity for something you can let go. The lesson had stayed deeper than memory. It lived in muscle. You Deathworlders really are paranoid, Jorik said. Nia faced forward again. People on Turnian call it being alive. That earned a few quiet laughs. Not from Jorik. He had been trying to beat Nia's emergency response scores for 3 weeks. The problem was that Nia did not seem to realize they were competing. If a pressure wall failed, she found the safe angle first. If a training deck tilted unexpectedly, she moved before the warning tone finished sounding. During rescue drills, she never froze when instructions changed halfway through. Instructor Malin Rowe called it excellent situational adaptation. Other cadets called it Deathworld instinct. Jorik called it luck. Today, he intended to prove it. Chief Instructor Rowe stepped onto the raised observation platform. Boarding teams, final equipment checks. Exercise begins in 4 minutes. Nia locked the last buckle on her counterbalanced breaching harness. The device wrapped around her shoulders and hips, carrying most of the weight of the compact boarding ram hanging at her side. The ram itself weighed almost 40 kilograms. The harness made it manageable. It also had a safety feature every cadet hated during crowded drills. A rear proximity field. If anyone stepped into the marked semicircle behind the wearer, the harness chirped until they moved. The reason was simple. If the wearer fell, dropped the ram, or triggered an emergency release, the rear counterbalance could swing outward with enough force to break bones. Jorik had heard the warning chirp every time he approached Nia from behind. Today he reached toward the equipment control panel, while no instructor was looking. 2 taps. Maintenance mode. 1 confirmation. The amber rear warning icon vanished. Jorik glanced toward Nia. She was facing the practice airlock, running through her entry sequence. She never saw him smile. He picked up a padded contact baton from the weapons rack. The baton was designed for controlled close-quarters drills. A solid strike hurt. It could knock someone off balance. It was not supposed to cause serious injury. That was exactly why Jorek chose it. He did not want to cripple her. He wanted her embarrassed. One surprise strike. One Deathworld cadet on the floor. One room full of witnesses, learning that Nia Mercer could be caught like anyone else. Jorek moved behind her. No warning chirp sounded. Nia's attention remained on the airlock. 3 meters. 2. 1. Jorek shifted the baton into both hands. A cadet near the weapons rack noticed him. His expression changed. Jorek. The baton slammed into the back of Nia's upper shoulder. Pain flashed white through her body. Her right arm went numb. The deck vanished beneath conscious thought. Nia did not decide what to do. Turnian decided for her. Drop the weight. Lower yourself. Clear the fall line. Her hand released the breaching ram. Her knees bent. Her hips turned. The harness sensed the sudden load loss and fired its emergency release. The boarding ram hit the deck. The counterbalance snapped through its rear arc. Jorek was standing inside it. There was a hard metallic impact. Then silence. Nia twisted around. Jorek was on the floor. The baton had rolled from his hand. For half a second, she could not understand what she was seeing. Then someone screamed for medical. Nia dropped beside him. Jorek. He tried to move. A broken sound escaped him instead. Blood spread between his fingers as he clutched his face. His jaw sat at an unnatural angle. One side of his cheek had already begun swelling. Nia reached for him, then stopped herself. Moving him could make things worse. "Don't touch your face," she said. He did not seem to hear her. "Medical response," Nia shouted. "Breach Deck 6, severe facial trauma." Chief Instructor Rowe was already running down the platform stairs. "What happened?" Nia looked at the baton, then at the disabled warning icon on her harness. "He hit me from behind." Rowe stared at Jorek, then at Nia. "With what?" "The baton." "And you did this?" "No." Rowe's eyes moved to the counterbalance arm, hanging behind Nia's harness. The instructor's expression hardened. "Don't move." Medical officers rushed through the pressure doors less than 2 minutes later. They stabilized Jorek's neck. A medic gently pulled his hands away from his face and swore under his breath. Possible orbital fracture, mandible unstable. Another medic checked his pupils. Right side response delayed. "Get him upstairs." Jorek was transferred onto a hovering stretcher. Nia stood frozen while they rushed him toward the lift. Her own shoulder burned. She barely noticed. At the doorway, Dr. Sel Oren from Academy Trauma met the team. She took one look at Jorek and started issuing orders. "Notify reconstruction. Prepare ocular imaging. I want maxillofacial surgery standing by before he reaches the theater." The doors closed behind them. Breach Deck 6 remained silent. Nia looked at the blood on the floor. Only 8 minutes earlier, Jorek had been laughing at her. Now surgeons were being called to save his face. And everyone in the room was staring at her. Chief Instructor Rowe placed Nia in an interview room overlooking the medical wing. It was not technically detention. The locked door made the distinction meaningless. Nia sat with an ice wrap around her shoulder, while a diagnostic patch monitored the numbness in her arm. Through the observation window, she could see emergency lights outside Surgery 3. They had been on for 47 minutes. Nobody would tell her much. Only that Jorek was alive. Only that his injuries were severe. Rowe entered carrying a tablet. "Nerve damage in your shoulder is temporary," she said. "Medical says you should regain full sensation." Nia nodded. "What about Jorek?" Ro remained standing. They're trying to preserve function in his jaw and right eye. Nia looked away. Ro set the tablet on the table. I need you to explain what you did. I already did. You said you dropped the RAM. I did. And then? I don't know. Ro frowned. Nia forced herself to continue. He hit me, my arm went dead. I dropped the weight and moved. You pivoted. I guess. The Academy combat system classified the pivot as a retaliatory maneuver. Nia looked back at her. What? Ro touched the tablet. Security footage appeared. Nia watched herself from above. Jorik stepped behind her. He swung. The baton connected. Then Nia moved. From the camera angle, it looked fast. Too fast. Her knees dropped, her hips turned. The harness snapped sideways. Jorik disappeared beneath the counterbalance. A red box appeared around Nia. Automated assessment. Hostile contact received. Counteroffensive movement detected. Severe force result. Nia stared at the words. That is what happened. The system says your body rotation redirected the harness toward him. I didn't redirect anything. You rotated. I was clearing the load. Ro folded her arms. Explain the difference. Nia opened her mouth. Nothing useful came out. On Turnian, nobody asked why you moved away from falling weight. You just moved. When the baton hit me, Nia said finally, I stopped thinking. That statement does not help you. I know. Ro's expression softened slightly. Nia, Cadet Sen may lose partial vision. His jaw is fractured in multiple places. His cheek structure collapsed on the right side. The equipment arm struck him with enough force that the surgeons are rebuilding sections of his face. Nia felt something heavy settle in her stomach. I never touched him. I know what you're saying. No, I mean I never chose to hit him. That is what we have to determine. Nia leaned back. The ice wrap suddenly felt too cold. What happens until then? You're suspended from practical training. Her eyes closed. Not expelled. Not yet. But close enough to feel it. Ro gathered the tablet. At Orison, cadets are responsible for controlling their equipment. He disabled my warning system. We don't know that. It wasn't working. That could have happened during the impact. Nia looked toward the surgical lights again. You think I attacked him? I think a cadet is in surgery, and the Academy system believes you counterattacked with breaching equipment. And what do you believe? Ro paused at the door. I believe machines can be wrong. That was not comfort. But people can be wrong too. Then she left. Engineer Tomas Wren arrived 3 hours later, wearing a gray maintenance uniform covered in grease stains. He did not introduce himself properly. He walked into the interview room, dropped 3 equipment modules onto the table and said, "The combat system is wrong." Nia sat upright. Chief Instructor Ro, standing behind him, raised an eyebrow. You're certain? No. Ro's expression tightened. Wren pointed at the modules. But I'm irritated enough to become certain. He pulled a chair over. The combat classifier watches bodies. I watch machines. He placed Nia's harness telemetry on the wall display. Dozens of lines scrolled past. Nia understood almost none of them. Wren expanded one section. This is the exact moment Cadet Sen struck you. A sharp spike appeared. Shoulder impact. Another line changed. Loss of grip pressure on the ram. Another. Weight transfer. Another. Emergency release. Wren tapped the screen. This happened before the classifier marked your movement as a counterattack. Ro stepped closer. How much before? 48 milliseconds. Nia frowned. That doesn't sound like much. It isn't, Ren said, which is why it matters. He enlarged the sequence. The harness had already committed to emergency release before your torso completed its turn. The counterbalance was moving whether you wanted it to or not. Ro studied the numbers. So Mercer did not swing the harness at him. Not through an active command. What about body movement? That's the next problem. Ren looked at Nia. Cadet, why did you turn? I was getting away from the load. Why? She gave him the same answer she had given Ro. I don't know, you just do. Ren smiled. That is a terrible explanation. I've been told. It may also be the right one. He stood. We're going back to breach deck 6. Ro looked surprised. Now, the deck is sealed. The equipment is still in place, and I want to see what happens when the harness dumps its load without a person wearing it. Nia glanced toward the medical wing lights. They were still glowing. Can I ask something first? Ro nodded. Jorek. The instructor checked her tablet. Surgery is ongoing. Ren stopped packing. Ro hesitated before continuing. They've stabilized his jaw. The surgeons are working around the orbital fracture now. Nia swallowed. Can they save his eye? They think so. That should have made her feel better. It did not. Breach Deck 6 looked different without cadets. Too large. Too quiet. The blood had been cleaned from the floor, but Nia knew exactly where Jorek had fallen. Ren had placed an empty harness on a testing frame. Behind it, a yellow semicircle glowed across the deck. This, he said, is the manufacturer's rear danger zone. Ro looked at Nia. The one you kept checking. Yes. Ren triggered the proximity sensor. He stepped into the semicircle. The harness chirped loudly. He stepped back out. The sound stopped. Now, he said, we dumped the load. A weighted training ram hung from the side of the harness. Ren released it remotely. The ram dropped. The counterbalance whipped backward. A padded test pillar standing inside the yellow arc took the full strike and rocked hard enough to trigger its floor restraints. Ro's face changed. Ren walked toward the pillar. That is the motion that hit Sen. Nia stared at the harness. It looked so ordinary now. Ren checked the test results. Same release angle, same counterweight acceleration. Ro said, but during the incident the rear warning alarm never sounded. Correct. Why? That, Ren said, is what has been bothering me. He opened the harness control panel. Then he went still. What? Ren pointed. The warning system had been placed into maintenance suppression. Ro stepped closer. Could the impact do that? No. Could Mercer have done it? Ren looked at Nia. Technically. Nia felt the room close around her again. Ren continued. But she would have needed to enter maintenance mode manually before the exercise. Ro turned to Nia. Did you? No. Can you prove that? Ren answered before Nia could. Yes. He pulled up the access records. Every Academy cadet had an equipment identity tag. Any maintenance override recorded the user. Ren stared at the screen, then slowly turned it toward Ro. User SENNJORK. The silence lasted several seconds. Nia's shoulder suddenly hurt more than it had all afternoon. Ro read the entry twice. He disabled her warning. 3 minutes before the strike. Why? Nia looked at the training baton, still sealed inside an evidence bag across the deck. He didn't want it to tell me he was behind me. The investigation changed direction immediately. Security technicians pulled raw footage from cameras the combat classifier did not normally use. The evidence became ugly in its simplicity. Jorik had watched Nia check the rear zone. He had waited until instructors looked elsewhere. He had opened the harness controls. He had suppressed the alarm. He had taken the baton. He had approached from behind. He had struck her. But one question remained. Had Nia deliberately turned the harness into him after being hit? Engineer Wren could prove the mechanism moved automatically. He could not prove what had happened inside Nia's head. For that, Instructor Rowe requested records from Turnian. Nia hated the idea. By the following morning, a wall in the investigation room displayed civilian emergency footage from her homeworld. Not military footage. School footage. Factory footage. Transit footage. Ordinary people reacting to extraordinary ground movement. A warehouse worker felt a ceiling beam shift and immediately released the cargo in his hands before moving sideways. A teenager carrying a water container stumbled during a quake, dropped it, lowered her stance, and pivoted away. A construction crew felt a platform tilt. Every worker dumped their tools and moved through the same compact sequence. Drop. Lower. Clear. Wren replayed Nia's incident beside them. Frame by frame. Her movement matched. Not approximately. Precisely. Rowe watched the screens. This is taught to children. Nia nodded. From primary school. Why the turn? Because structures don't usually fall straight down during a ground shift. They twist. If you just step backward, you can follow the collapse. Wren pointed at the videos. So you lower your center and move laterally. Yes. And if you're holding something heavy, you release it before it controls where you fall. Rowe looked at the security footage again. Jorik's baton struck. Nia's fingers opened. Her knees bent. Her body pivoted. The harness followed its safety design. Jorik stood directly inside the path he had deliberately made silent. Wren folded his arms. The combat classifier saw a rotational movement after hostile contact and called it retaliation. Rowe said, because that is what its models were trained to recognize. Exactly. And it had never been trained on Turnian collapse responses. No. Nia stared at the screen. All her life, people had treated the way Turnian residents moved as strange. Too cautious. Too abrupt. Too ready to drop expensive equipment. Now an academy computer had turned that difference into evidence against her. The door opened. Dr. Sel Oren entered still wearing surgical blue. Nia stood immediately. How is he? Oren rubbed tired eyes. Alive. And his eye. We saved it. Nia exhaled. The doctor continued. There is significant facial reconstruction, multiple fractures. His jaw required reinforcement. The right orbital structure has been stabilized. He will need additional procedures, but we expect him to retain functional vision. Rowe nodded. Can he speak? Not normally, but he can answer questions. The room became very quiet. Jorik's statement came by medical terminal. His face was mostly hidden beneath stabilization mesh and swelling. Nia was not permitted to speak to him directly. She was not sure she wanted to. Rowe asked the questions. Cadet Sen, did Cadet Mercer strike you before you approached her? Jorik pressed no. Did she threaten you? No. Did you disable the rear proximity alarm on her breaching harness? A long pause. Yes. Why? The terminal offered him a text pad. It took almost a minute for the words to appear. Wanted to prove she could be surprised. Ro's jaw tightened. Did you intend for the breaching harness to activate? No. Did you know you were standing in its emergency release arc? Another long pause. Yes. Nia looked down. Ro continued. Why did you enter it? Believed she would fall forward. Why strike her at all? Jorek's fingers moved slowly. Everyone kept saying DATHWRLD instinct. Wanted them to see she was normal. Nobody in the investigation room spoke. Finally, Ro asked, after the baton connected, did Mercer turn toward you and intentionally strike you? Jorek stared into the camera. Then pressed. No. The terminal disconnected. Ren leaned against the wall. He wanted to prove she was normal. Nia looked at the frozen screen. He proved I was trained. Chief Instructor Ro insisted on one final reconstruction. Not for the investigators. For the Academy. Breach Deck 6 was reopened under controlled conditions. No cadets stood near the equipment. Cameras recorded every angle. An empty harness replaced Nia. A padded impact arm replaced Jorek's baton. A sensor dummy stood where he had stood. Ren linked the harness telemetry to the wall display. Ro spoke for the recording. Sequence begins. The impact arm struck the shoulder mount. The simulated grip released. The weighted ram fell. The harness committed to emergency release. Its counterbalance crossed the yellow arc. The dummy's face sensor registered a catastrophic impact. Ren froze the replay. Now compare timestamps. 3 numbers appeared. Hostile impact. Load release. Counterbalance activation. Then later. Wearer rotation. Ren looked toward the recording cameras. By the time Cadet Mercer's body began the motion identified as a counterattack, the equipment was already moving through its emergency cycle. He changed the display. Jorek's maintenance override appeared. The safety warning that should have prevented Cadet Sen from entering this area was intentionally disabled using his identification. Then came the Turnian civilian footage. Drop. Lower. Clear. Nia watched herself beside a 10-year-old child, escaping a collapsing classroom shelf. Same movement. Same instinct. Same purpose. Survive the thing falling around you. Ro faced the cameras. The Academy's original automated assessment is withdrawn. Nia felt her throat tighten. The evidence establishes that Cadet Mercer did not intentionally deploy force against Cadet Sen. She received an unauthorized surprise strike while carrying active breaching equipment. Her response was a conditioned emergency movement consistent with civilian survival training from Turnian. Ro paused. Cadet Sen disabled a safety warning, knowingly entered a restricted equipment arc, and initiated the contact that caused the emergency release. No cheering followed. Nia was glad. Jorek was still lying in a medical bed with a reconstructed face. This was not a victory. It was only the truth arriving late. All disciplinary action against Cadet Mercer is terminated effective immediately. Ro looked directly at her. You are cleared to return to training once medical releases your shoulder. Nia nodded. Thank you, instructor. Ro shut down the recording. Ren began collecting equipment. Nia remained where she was. Ro approached quietly. You could look happier. Someone almost lost an eye. He attacked you. I know. And you were cleared. I know that too. Ro studied her. What are you thinking? Nia looked at the yellow danger arc. That if the system had understood what I was doing, none of this would have taken a day to prove. Ro followed her gaze. No. And if the alarm had been physical instead of something one cadet could silence, maybe he wouldn't have stood there. That is being corrected. Nia looked at her. How? Ro gave the faintest smile. You'll see. Jorik Sen remained in Academy Medical for another 11 days. He would recover. Not completely. His jaw would require months of therapy. One cheek contained synthetic reinforcement. The doctors expected his right eye to retain useful vision, though depth perception might take time to normalize. Academy discipline would wait until he was medically fit to answer for the violation. No one called him a monster. No one called Nia a hero. Chief Instructor Ro made sure of both. Instead, Orison Joint Fleet Academy did what institutions rarely enjoyed doing. It admitted that its procedures had been wrong. The combat classification system received new survival response datasets from Frontier and Hazard worlds. Emergency behaviors that resembled combat movements would no longer automatically be labeled hostile. Maintenance suppression on active training harnesses now required instructor authorization. And electronic danger zones were no longer considered enough. When Nia returned to Breach Deck 6 12 days later, the numbness in her arm was gone. Her shoulder still ached when she raised it too quickly. She expected people to stare. They did. She expected whispers. There were some. What she did not expect was the floor. Every breaching station had changed. Behind each harness, technicians had painted a wide red semicircle directly onto the deck. Not projected light. Not a sensor field. Paint. Permanent. Impossible to disable with 2 taps on a control panel. Nia stopped beside her assigned rig. Cadet Vessa Lin, standing nearby, pointed at the red marking. That for you. Nia shook her head. It's for whoever is behind me. Vessa smiled nervously. Good distinction. Nia stepped into the harness. Straps locked around her shoulders. The boarding ram attached at her side. A familiar weight settled against her hip. Across the deck, Chief Instructor Ro raised one hand. Team's ready. Nia checked the pressure door. She checked her grip. Then, from habit, she glanced behind herself. 3 cadets were standing nearby. Every one of them noticed the red line. Without being told, they stepped back. Outside the semicircle, Nia faced forward again. The training timer changed from amber to green. For the first time since the accident, the warning behind her stayed completely silent. Not because someone had disabled it. Because nobody was standing where they should never have been.